Yeah, draft is a game that we played growing up as youths, you know. We play a lot of board games, but we don't understand or overstand. I was having a fullness of the programming of the draft board game, for example. So here's the philosophy of the draft board game. The philosophy of the draft game, otherwise known as checkers, it's known as draft in England, and in America it's known as checkers, but it's the same game. So the philosophy of this game is a mind game. Yeah? It's to move or draw by jumping over rival pieces diagonally. The philosophical abstract of the game is to take all of the rival's pieces or produce a position so that the rival is unable to move. This abstract strategy board game for 2 players is a mind sport played on a chessboard of 64 black and white checkered squares. Each player has 12 pieces, normally in the form of a fat round counter. The real shades of the pieces on the board do not necessarily need to be black and white, but they are normally referred to as black and white regardless. The board is placed between the 2 rivals so that the near right-hand corner square is white for both players, the same as chess. Black always play first. Traditionally, a coin is tossed to see which player will play first. Each player pieces are placed on the 12 black squares nearest to the player. The white squares are not used in the game at all. So in this draft game, it's 64 squares on the board, which means 32 square black and 32 square white. But the white squares are not used in the game at all. It's just the black squares. Isn't that something? The pieces move on the board diagonally so as to remain on the black squares throughout. As I was saying earlier, it's just strictly the black square play this game. So my philosophy is balance is key. Is my greater philosophy. The squares are balanced, but the game isn't, because only the black squares play the game. So, I am not in agreement with the philosophy of this checkers game, having the black squares only playing while the white squares just sit there. What a program. The meaning of the game. Remember, at the corners of the 4 corners of the square, at the white square, them there, so them come first, right? That's at the corner. Them at the start, according to the game. Yeah? So, the meaning of the game. Play so-called black people mind game. Play so-called black people against themselves using mind game tactics and strategy. That is, stealing from each other, enslaving, oppressing, killing each other, Keep them distracted with war amongst themselves. Remember, the black squares are used, never the white. But the white squares is situated on the right corner, starting point of the board. Remember, that is the westernized, abstract philosophy of the game. They call it the English draft game, British, or the checkers game, American English. As we know it to this day, the checkers game is a spin-off from an ancient game named the Alquerque or Quercat game. The British claimed the draft game known as checkers, spelled CHEQUERS, which means a country house in England, which means the official residence of the British Prime Minister home, which is number 10 Downing Street, London, which means the lodge. All mean the same. Yeah. The philosophy of the game. We keep so-called black people in their place by any means necessary. Divide, conquer, and rule. Enslave them by using their own people against them. Check, for example, sabotage Marcus Garvey, sell him, put him in prison, Malcolm X, Winnie Mandela, Martin Luther King, confession of Bob Marley killing. So-called black people suffer from discrimination and racism across the world due to the philosophical abstract programming, brainwashing in the form of brainwash education, which is educate, convince, convert, influence, condition, instill, alter, persuade. Keep so-called black people in place by stealing all their resources by any means necessary. The latest casualty is Kobe Bryant, according to the Chequers philosophy. Time for him to step down, the source revealed to me. Our riches and resources is now in the hands of the so-called white squares on the board. That just sits on the board and give orders. When Bob Marley passed on, they were about to lose it all. Bob had a so-called black wife. However, the white square